How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, June the 7th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's produced this Come On with an edition of the program. So if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So one more sleep for hockey fans until the Stanley Cup Finals kick off tomorrow evening. Of course, the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers go at it. First time since the Oilers last won a cup in 1990. Of course, they won 5 over the course of 7 seasons. Florida's been to the finals now, it will be 3 times. Last year, 1996, and here we go, kicking off tomorrow night. I know some people just give up on the hockey when their team gets knocked out. I get it. You do what you want with your own spare time, but there's nothing quite like a bit of playoff hockey. All right, at the Men's Volleyball Nations League, Canada, number 10 in the world, drops a 4-setter to Argentina, number 8 in the world, and they get the Americans tomorrow. Look out. And all right, for tennis fans, big weekend coming up at the French Open. And just a couple of quick notes on that Grand Slam tournament. It was on this date in 1981 where legend Bjorn Borg won his 11th and final Grand Slam, beat Ivan Lendl that day. In 2009, Roger Federer, another legend, won his only French title, securing the career Grand Slam in 2009. All right, I didn't know this was such a thing, but there's something called the Granite Awards in the sport of curling. Of course, curling really felt like an extremely long season this last go-around, but apparently, Nation of the Year, so the nominees were Canada, Norway, Scotland, South Korea, Sweden, Switzerland, and the award goes to Canada. We had a banner season on the ice in curling, and the Team of the Year nominees were Team Tornaz, Team White, Nicholas Edin from Sweden, and Team Guju. Team Guju gets the gold and granite. I didn't even know they were things, but there you go, congratulations. And every time you sit down to watch a baseball game, and it is funny, and I saw someone comment on it, so the Jays hang on to beat the Orioles yesterday 6-5, and the celebration was like they won the World Series, which is sort of sometimes over the top, but hey, who cares? But every time you watch a baseball game, or virtually every time, you'll hear a mention of someone had Tommy John surgery. So that's, of course, the ulnar collateral ligament reconstruction in the elbow. But what gets lost inside of all that, Tommy John is basically known for that surgery. It was first performed on the legendary pitcher, but he had a pretty great career. 288 wins, an ERA career-wise of, I think, 3.34. So Tommy John known for the surgery, not for his exploits. All right, and for many schools around this area anyway, today's Sports Day. So hopefully everyone has a blast there. Sticking with schools. So we know in the most recent provincial budget there was some $41 million put aside for funding for new schools. One in Cartwright, Portugal Cove St. Philip's, which is controversial, of course, because that's a high school going down there, versus out in Paradise, Peely's Island, and Kenmount Terrace, which I can see right through the window from this studio. So no shovels in the ground, no real plans. Remember, when the school was announced for Kenmount Terrace, we didn't have any idea how many students, what grades, and of course parents who have children in Larkhall Academy or at Leary's Brook Junior High or Prince Wales Collegiate, the schools are overcrowded. In some of the schools are using music rooms, libraries, cafeterias as makeshift classrooms, and they're wondering what's going on. And that's a pretty excellent question. So if the plan was to build a school in that area, and it looks like a pretty sleepy residential subdivision from Kenmount Road, but up in there itself, it's actually really quite busy and heavily populated. So there's been school consultations in March. No update has been shared with the parents as of yet. So if you're a Kenmount Terrace parent and would like to talk about that, or your children right now are at Larkhall Academy, Leary's Brook Junior High, Prince Wales Collegiate, and they will be reconfigured this coming September. So yeah, for some people, they'll be concerned. Starting September, St. Andrews Elementary and Lark will have students from kindergarten to grade 4, Larry's Brook from grades 5 to 8, and Princess of Wales Collegiate, grade 9 and up. And of course, you know me, anything in the world of education, we'd love to talk about it with you this morning. And also for the folks who have children that used to attend Holy Redeemer out in Spaniards Bay, they've been dispersed to other schools. Amazingly, they still haven't been able to identify the source of whatever the chemical smell is. And so I've been asked to join this Facebook group to save Holy Redeemer. Parents from that school, welcome to join us as well. All right, so the final day at the Energy NL conference. I'm not so sure how much new was gleaned from it, but, you know, we had a presentation from the leadership of Equinor regarding Beta Nord. They're slightly more optimistic this year, but they still point to all sorts of challenges with trying to fund this particular project, which is comprised of some 5 wells, not just one hole punched. So not much to learn from that particular announcement. And hydro, it came across as reported as some big new revelations offered by Jennifer Williams, the CEO, but not particularly. So they're talking about the fact that hydro is going to invest some $1 billion over the course of the next few years to meet the forecasted demand, which they say is going to increase by some 16% in the coming years. I think the number they use is 2034. Okay, but inside that $1 billion, they're talking about an 8th generating unit at Bay d'Espoir, which was already announced. That was some $527 million. We know that Newfoundland Power in particular talked about the need for Holyrood to exist into the future. They need that fossil fuel backup that can be brought online immediately when renewable energy is not available. That comes from Gary Murray at Newfoundland Power. Jennifer Williams also went on to talk about a 150 megawatt combined cycle turbine likely to be located at Holyrood. So they talk about lots of electrification and population growth and maybe some industrial expansion. But not a whole lot new there. Now, a couple of things that they did point to, though, is the thought that they're not only going to need 380 additional megawatts of power, but also talking about buying 80 megawatts of wind power. I suppose that goes back to the onshore proposals for, you know, the 5 notables that are in some form of progress. We're not really sure where many of them stand. We do know that Pattern has submitted an environmental assessment. World Energy GH2 is at the top of everybody's mind on that front. But when you talk about green hydrogen, and some of the concerns have been voiced, on top of environmental concerns, which are very real, is the concept that it is all for export and not for any domestic use. And this wasn't factored in, I don't think, by Ms. Williams yesterday. But in Nova Scotia, they have 2 proposals. One from Everwind Fuels, who are also here in this province, and a company called Bearhead Energy. They're actually looking at a feasibility study for some local domestic industrial markets. So 3 groups, the Shaw Group, Michelin, and Port Hawkesbury Paper. They are working towards looking at whether or not green hydrogen can be used there. So I haven't heard any industry or any entity looking at any feasibility with incorporating green hydrogen into their energy portfolio in this province. So if that's something, and whether or not there's actually consideration of using green hydrogen as part of Newfoundland Power or Newfoundland Labrador Hydro's portfolio, I don't know. But in Nova Scotia, they're looking for some domestic markets as well as some of the markets abroad. Okay, this one will get attention, no question. People have long wondered, how does it work? How does the PUB adjust fuel prices? It used to be not that long ago where we only saw an update coming Wednesday evening for changes on Thursday morning. Then, of course, the use of the interruption formula has become all too commonplace. But now they're looking to the public, whether it be in the form of a formal presentation at the PUB or a written submission. We'll give you some of the dates, but here's what's going on. So they call this a consultation document. But the basics, the summary of it, it's a really thick document that I saw in front of Brian Callahan's computer this morning. It's extremely thick. The basics are, for folks, if this is adopted, for folks living further from major hubs like St. John's, you'll be paying more. They talk about the cost for the distribution of fuel. So, for instance, if you're on an island, it'd be even more expensive to get the fuel to you. So if this is adopted in full, which would mimic what's going on in other parts of the Maritimes, that will see a different price scale, different pricing jurisdictions, and the basics, the summary is, for folks living in rural Newfoundland, you'll be paying more than you currently are today for gasoline, diesel, furnace oil, stove oil, propane. So I would imagine that's going to bring upon a pretty furious reaction from people living further afield from the so-called major hubs, but that's what's being considered. The government actually mandated a review back in 2022, and this is the result. So if you want to chime in on that this morning, because I'm sure if you're living in smaller parts of the province, that's not music to your ears. So a request for presentations runs until the 15th of July. Letters of comment should be filed by August the 16th, and I think they're probably going to be overwhelmed with reaction from people living outside of what they call the major centres, whatever they might be. All right, Marine Atlantic gave an update yesterday about the problems that plague the new ferry, which is a leased unit. There's a lease in place for 5 years, and then a decision to be made whether or not they want to purchase this. It's owned by a company called Stena. It was built in China. It had a little pit stop along the way in Sri Lanka. Apparently that's not related to the current mechanical woes or problems with the lubrication system. But it's going to be delayed from hitting the Argentia run, which was supposed to be on the 14th of June, to the 26th of June. It does indeed come with a problem for passengers. Impacts some 3,600 passengers who have to be rebooked on other routes. They're going to be adding some 13 different routes to accommodate the affected passengers. There is some compensation coming in the form of $200 vouchers that can be spent on travel or meals with Marine Atlantic. Children will get $100. So when people make their travel plans, of course, there's always going to be the possibility, whether it be mechanical issues, reliability, weather, what have you, that they might be interrupted. But these types of delays are going to be a problem. I mean, they shut down the reservation system. I'm not entirely sure why, but I suppose they wouldn't be able to oblige or to live up with the reservation, giving all the rebooking that had to be done for these 3,600 people. And if you're one of them, we can take it on this morning. All right, let's get back to some housing-related matters. So we all know the Tent City conversation, and we're familiar with the 106 Airport Road, the former Comfort Inn, that opened the doors in March, and here we are in the early offings of June, still not a whole lot of advancement. Now, I don't know how easy it could or should have been to have all 100 rooms occupied and a full staffing complement in place, but the last update we had was 11 residents and 10 staff, and we're still not 100% sure how or if this is going to work as intended. The thought long was, in some corners, that, why are you in a tent as opposed to an emergency shelter? And just last week, for the second time in a matter of months, trying to figure out a sentencing for someone who stabbed someone to death in an emergency shelter. So it has proven to be particularly unsafe. There is a review done about standards inside these emergency shelters, as some people refer to as hellholes. All right, the province spends millions of dollars annually on these shelters, and they are problematic. So you can hear from residents who have chosen to flee, because there's one story out in the news today where a lady went back to an emergency shelter. Her former abuser moved into a men's shelter right alongside, and she had to take off. So when the province committed to this review, and apparently it was supposed to be released on the 3rd of this month, and here's today the 7th, where is it? They say that the standards do exist, but it's fine for them to say it, it's fine for them to think it or to have them in hand, but quite another for the other political parties and members of the general public to know exactly what's going on, because we are talking about not only the safety and the well-being of folks who have to be in the shelters, but the millions of dollars that we all chip in on for said shelters. So if there's a standard document in place based on the review that the province committed to, then where is it? That's not gotcha stuff. That's you say something in public. We are going to conduct this type of review, and we're going to release it on this date. And here we are, 4 days past that date, and still no look at it currently. So you want to take it on. And of course, inside that world, many folks who may indeed be in shelters, and many folks who may indeed be persons with disabilities, and there's a funding announcement coming up at 11 o'clock this morning regarding persons with disabilities. Some sort of basic income will be attached to that. We'll find out at 11. But many of those people may indeed have a home care worker. The home care negotiations, there's lots of stories floating around, not only about the wages proposal and the medical benefits proposal, but some of what people are calling the negative interactions with representatives of the union. Here's the one question that has been posed several times, and I'm not even sure what I think of this. So, of course, it's the so-called Group of 22, representing over 4,000 workers. They negotiated this particular contract, and the union is recommending it, but the government's not at the table. Now, of course, those private agencies are technically the employer, but the purse strings are held in large part by the provincial government, and they're not part of the process. I'm not quite sure what the rationale is for a government to not be a part, a real ongoing part of these negotiations, but the home care conversation, we're happy to take it on. All right. So yesterday we talked about the issues regarding the sole sourcing of consulting contracts. McKinsey & Co. have been the beneficiary to the tune of over $200 million. We've talked about the Auditor General saying the country is not prepared for cybercrime, which cost Canadians over $500 million last year, and only a small percentage of those crimes are even ever reported. But the story that I'm not so sure why it's not getting more attention here, it certainly is across the country, is a report brought forward by the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, NSICOP. You know the story by now. Apparently, there is a certain number of unnamed members of Parliament who wittingly and willfully and purposefully were sharing information with bad actors representing foreign countries. Whether that be China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, I don't know, but we should know. Here's the problem. What's next? It's hard to put faith in politicians to investigate themselves. And people are saying we should know who these people are, and I don't disagree. But how does that process work? Who does this investigation? Even if you don't have or have diminished faith in the RCMP, some law enforcement agency has to do these investigations. It's fine to say that let's just release all the names. There's a problem there with ongoing intelligence gathering, I would assume. There's also a problem if your name is attached to this domestic collaboration, and in some form, based on the severity of your actions, it could absolutely be technically treason. I know people throw that around just about every single time that they see or hear something they don't like, but meddling in elections, for foreign countries to be noodling in, getting involved in nomination races, but when the members of Parliament, whoever they are, whatever party they represent, however many of them are, if this is what's happening, then where do we go from here? I don't think it's legit to just release all the names today. Lives will be ruined. I mean, there is a difference with sharing classified information with a foreign country versus letting someone representing China and the Chinese diaspora being bussed into a nomination meeting. There are different levels of severity here, but we've got to get to the bottom of this. This is going to be a huge problem in the months and years to come. If Canadians have further trust in the democratic institutions, notably elections, then we are doomed. So where do we go from here? It's fine for the Liberals to say we can't release the names now, and I know there are probably some actual reasons behind that, but at some point, someone has to clearly tell us exactly what next steps are to identify people who have committed these crimes. Right? It's not a faux pas. It's not a misstep. If you wittingly cooperated with foreign countries to get involved in classified information here and eroding election integrity, we've got to find out who you are. We have to punish you appropriately. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Let's have a great show to wrap up the week. Megan's in the queue to kick it off with the home care negotiations. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Before we get to the calls, as reminded, and rightfully so, by one of our listeners, Chris, I was asking aloud whether or not there was going to be any domestic use for the green hydrogen proposed here in this province, and of course, there is one. And that'd be Brea Renewable Fuels, out of course, former Come By Chance. ABO Energy wants to develop hydrogen for use at that facility. Thanks a lot, Chris. You're absolutely right. Let's go to line number one. Megan, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
So I'd like to talk about the negotiations for the home care agents, the home care workers, but based on a client's perspective, because I think home care workers are thinking that by going on strike or voting no for the negative negotiation contract that's put forth, they're going to abandon their clients, and I'm thinking that they need to be reminded that they're not only fighting for themselves and their higher wages and more benefits, but they're fighting to have a better work environment so that they can provide higher quality care. And I'm just thinking they're getting bullied into taking what they've always been offered, which is nothing. 95 cents increase and a year waiting for benefits is nothing compared to what you could get if you worked in a different industry. For example, I work for the government, and I started at $30 an hour with benefits, including sick and family leave right away. So the person that is supposed to help me get to work is supposed to get half of that income and no benefits, no time to get to work, because they're supposed to be at me for when they leave their other client at 4, and they're thinking that they can possibly manage. How are they supposed to support me if they have no food because they didn't get time to prepare lunch, or they don't have any income to have groceries? And then I'm supposed to rely on them for support. And I went to the meeting yesterday for the negotiations, and after 8 minutes, the union rep yelled at the home care workers that were trying to learn about their contract and debate with them and walked out. And they didn't just yell at them, they cursed at them.
There was cursing from the representative from NAPE?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, number one,
sorry.
that's, that cannot be the way. Even if there's contentious issues at play, it can't be people wanting to behave like that, regardless of the question. Now, there might be some people from the floor trying to stir the place up a little bit too, but we're talking about people's livelihoods, and so these are legitimate concerns being voiced and need to be treated professionally. I'll start with that. So. Mm-hmm. I don't think home care workers, I can't speak for them, but I don't imagine they want to find themselves on any type of picket line because they do what they do in an effort to help their clients. And I think you are one, are you, Megan?
Yes, I am a client, and I get 15 hours a day. So that means that for one shift it's 8 hours, and for the next shift it's 7 hours. It's not just one worker that is exhausted. Every worker is exhausted. Every worker has came to me and burst into tears because the agency doesn't realize that they don't have time to get to work. They cannot come into a shift with 30 minutes notice and get all the way to CBS. And when they find out that they can't do it, the agency threatens that if you don't do it, we're going to not give you any more shifts. So then they struggle to get to me, and by the time they get to me, they can't perform their job. And then I have to explain to my boss, be like, I can't make it to work because my home care worker is unable to perform. And then there's this perception, I think the union rep, before things got heated, they told them if they didn't like the contract, they could get a new job and they would be replaced. Who are they going to replace them with? Whenever I call the agency and say, my worker is sick, can you send me someone new? They say, Megan, we don't have anyone to put you to bed. You'll have to go to sleep in your wheelchair.
Yeah. I mean, and a couple of the things we've heard about, okay, if you don't like it, quit, we'll replace you. That's easier said than done, number one. And they're also talking about the fact that, and I think this one of the representatives of the union said, well, if you do take job action, you're going to end up losing your job. I mean, really? That's not really their position. It shouldn't be their position to take. And plus, that would be up to the agency that employs the home care worker whether or not anyone continues to work for them, not the union. So there's lots of confusing back and forths going on here. But as a home care recipient of home care, your perspective is most welcome here because we've been hearing from plenty of home care workers, and fair enough. But it's nice to hear from you this morning.
Mm-hmm. What I really like to let the home care workers know, because a lot of them are writing in the group that even if they go on strike, they'll volunteer their time so that their client doesn't go without care. I'm telling you to walk away from the job. If they have to put us into hospitals or long-term care for the extended time till they give you the rights you need, that's better than coming into work and for the rest of the contract not being able to function because you're pulled too tight. There's no point to think that you're saving your client because eventually when you leave, someone who's going to be replacing you and they're not going to be able to function the way you did. So you're not just fighting for yourself, you're not just fighting for your client, you're fighting for the future home care workers, which you may need in the future.
Points well made this morning, Megan. I'm glad you called. Would you like to say anything else?
And I would like the union rep to realize that if they're going to be in a position of power, I understand things get heated, but you have no right to walk out when people took time off work and missed income to go to the meeting, and you didn't even have the courtesy to stay and at least have a cordial visit and explain to them like you're willing to work with them, not just walk out because you didn't think there was any point.
Megan, thanks for the call this morning. Really appreciate your time.
Have a great day.
The same to you, Megan. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There you go. And an interesting perspective to share. The client and what happens. And, the pressure's on and the long shifts. Some people just kind of view the home care worker as someone there to keep you company and clean up the dishes and make you some supper or stuff like that. But, of course, some of those tasks can be quite extensive and some very difficult work. And you've heard Megan describe the pressures that she thinks her home care workers are under. And then, of course, what seems to be really pressurized meetings. I mean, the meetings were important because people had questions about the details and they wanted to ask about medical benefits and why it's going to take a year. And they come back there here is that it's going to take the insurance companies a year to implement the benefits package. Not so sure why that would be so much different, say, for instance, than early childhood educators who were told that the turnaround for their benefits would be more like 3 months. So those are fair concerns being brought forward. It would be nice to hear stories where the meetings have been brought down and the temperature has been brought down to where folks can, in calm fashion, we would hope, ask the questions and in calm reaction from union leaders to give them the answers to their critically important questions. I mean, if you're going to host the meetings and for the purpose of sharing information, then maybe, just maybe, we get back to that as opposed to what seems to be the infiltration of emotion versus just the actual black and white of what's going on. Anyway, I won't squeeze anyone in before we get to the break, but it also reminds me, and I want to put this back out on the front burner, because this impacts a ton of different agencies. I think some 18 employment support agencies across the province, and this is the reduction in the most recent federal budget of the Labour Market Agreement transfer monies. That top-up has been in place since 2017. Last year, there was $3.5 billion shared amongst the provinces and territories. This year, the federal government cut $625 million from that transfer agreement. So in this province, there's $142 million on the table that the employers or the organisers and support groups can draw from, but that's a reduction of $16.5 million. It has a legitimate impact. We've heard from a couple of people in particular on this show. Sean Wiltshire, I believe is the man's name, pardon me, from Avalon Employment. They have a world-renowned employment support agency. So they're thinking, like, not only for persons with disabilities, but possibly on the autism spectrum, their autism program of support may indeed go by the wayside. Now, the provinces come in to say they'll backstop the shortfall for some 6 months, but that doesn't answer questions into the future. The federal government has been pretty clear on this. We had the federal minister responsible, Randy Boissonneau, on the show. He said very clearly that they're asking the province to step up and provide these types of supports, as opposed to what has been a pretty significant reliance on the federal government. It seems like a particularly bizarre place to take money away. When we know, like if you talk about food insecurity and housing and all the rest of it, to take money away from supporting organizations that are supporting and helping some of the most vulnerable people in the country, it's a strange place to start. It really, truly is a bizarre issue. So if that's jeopardizing these agencies' ability to help people get into the workforce, then what are we talking about here? The federal budget was $535 billion, and some of the cuts are impacting the most vulnerable, as opposed to people who can indeed be better positioned to support themselves and to handle their own affairs. That particular issue can be right back out there for your discussion right after this break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the pending FFAW election. One of the three candidates vying for the presidency is Dave Callahan. He's there. Mike wants to talk about the Energy NL conference. And as I put out there, questions being asked about the Ken Mount Terrace School. Reid is in the queue to talk about that. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Dave Callahan. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. Thank you.
I hear you might even have, I don't know about sun, but not rain and drizzle and fog.
Well, I can actually see across Kenmount Road here this morning, and I haven't been able to all week, so it's a little bit brighter.
That's pretty good.
I tell you what, the other day, and you know, every time there's bad weather, it's the worst I've ever seen, but the fog one day earlier this week, driving down Kelsey, you could barely make out the Sobeys grocery store from the road. It was unbelievable.
My God.
And thankfully that's not the case today.
It must be tough on the boys that are out off there fishing. There's no doubt about it. But I think as you get off the coast, it's a little bit better as you get away from the city and whatever. From what I'm told.
Apparently so.
Yeah. I guess having known that it's I'm the only one that hasn't called in yet to your show, decided that probably it's a good time to do so. And Friday, of course, is a good day to do so. And who knows, maybe with the good weather, there's a few people listening and may understand at the end of this why I've decided why I'd like to run for the presidency of the FFAW.
Let's hear it.
Well, there's a variety of reasons, no doubt. I mean, we hear most of them every day. The price of crab, the price of cod, price of lobster, whatever the case may be, no cod fishery, capelin issue. There's a variety of things that are, of course, ongoing, and a lot of them being faced and dealt with by the FFAW. The biggest reason that I would like to take this role. First of all, I think I'm qualified for it. I've been in the fishing industry all my life.
In what capacity, Dave?
What's that?
In what capacity?
Started off in the 70s. We used to dry. At the time, we were drying squid and pressing it and sending it to China. It was a new market. Nobody really had done that. My father got involved with it, and then that's kind of where it started throughout the 80s. Leading up to the moratorium, we were large groundfish processors, and we had our own boats that fished. And most recently, for me, I've made a return to the fishery, in the lobster fishery. I fish with my buddy seasonally for lobster and help his effort here when it hits the ground, it hits the shores and this type of thing. And I'm around it every day enough to know that, let's say, first of all, there's a lot of wrongs that need to be righted. And the first one is to get back the confidence of the people that are members of this union and to have the confidence restored in the union itself, because it's a very valuable one.
And here's the magic question there. How do you accomplish that? Because the fracture is deep, and I'm completely unsure of the road back to complete solidarity or unity. So what do you mean by what you just said?
Well, I've been told by many, and I had a couple of different groups that wanted to nominate me to run, is that they're getting tired of having people that are connected to the union, to the old guard, to the previous running of the union, to transition into these roles. Basically, they want a fresh and new start as far as representation is concerned, that it doesn't come from the endorsement or the acknowledgement, I guess, or the anointing by the above, because I've seen a fair bit of that, and I think probably most in the industry have. And they're just back at the point where they're tired that it'll be a repeat of the same old, same old. And that is one reason that I can certainly say that I would definitely stand out. I'm not a member. I'm a member of the FFAW, but I'm not part of the ruling part of the FFAW. Have not been now or previous. But I do have enough history in the fishery, connections in the fishery to make it the future, I think, probably a little better. But the only way for this union that it gets better in the future is that people have got to have confidence that the union is there for them, for the members, and that their say really matters. Because I think that's after depleting quite a bit over the past number of years. Like things that I see that DFO specialist just recently came up with, a fellow by the name of Daniel Rickard. He just acknowledged what was wrong with most of what's taking, and this is from the federal government's perspective, which I don't understand why the FFAW and like the Sealers Association haven't jumped on this. They've actually said that the spawning stock in our fishery for cod has gotten to the point where there's a very high mortality rate that's causing 60 to 70% of the cod in our southern Gulf to not survive beyond the age of 5 years old, which is their spawning, breeding stock. And the conclusion that he made was that seals are the most likely cause of the natural mortality. And it's not long ago that the federal government kind of admitted that they just realized that seals eat cod. Well, let's just say that I guess they never moved at the fastest rate to fix this. And I mean, most recently they've said that probably a return to a normal commercial fishery is not going to be possible unless this is dealt with. Well, the federal government only just said that they would consider I don't even know what word to use or what word is okay anymore, cull, hunt, whatever the case may be. It seems that the term seems to suit what they do, but there's a need to reduce the number of seals. The federal government knows it, but they just said, well, we may consider it if there's a business case for it. Well, that kind of flies in the face of the thought of conservation. I mean, there's a need to reduce this for the conservation of the cod stock. The capelin stocks are at a point where they say that basically the current management plan is not reflective of stock health. And I'm like, I mean, what does that mean? Like, I mean, obviously your science is very incomplete. I think the science certainly needs to be revisited for a variety of reasons, from accurate and responsible maintenance of various stocks around the island, and that's from capelin to cod to you name it. But what has to happen is that there needs to be a plan that's put into place and happens quickly. The moratorium's been on since 91. We haven't seen a sensible return to a commercial fishery since that day. And it's about time that probably somebody came out with something more than inconclusive science, because case in point, I mean, the federal government got a management plan for capelin, and they say that the stocks are not reflective of the, I guess the base is not reflective of the stock's health. That's very incomplete. And I mean, that's bottom of the food chain as far as the rest of our species are concerned that rely upon capelin. Well, this is the type of thing that needs to take place, that probably science gets revisited, but we got to drive that. I mean, right now there's nobody really standing up and screaming about this, as much as we're not screaming about, like, the price of lobster. I'll go there now, because that's the current one where people are seeing such a massive margin between wharf price. Right now here on the West Coast, it's down to like $5.65 a pound, while the retail prices in the market don't reflect these huge changes. I mean, we almost always see at the start of our season, now we've got a market glitch. It starts off pretty good, and then all of a sudden, bango. It seems to me that these market adjustments and the drops in the prices, like, they don't go along at all with the laws of economics. In particular,
historically, the lobster market has looked pretty consistent. You know, you see a spike around Mother's Day and then a slow trickle thereafter. You know, some of the problems that people have in the lobster industry, like, for instance, look at Rick Stanley out in Cox's Cove. He built his own lobster holding tank so that he can have full control of his destiny. He can have full control of his fate regarding pricing, which I had Rick on the program to talk about why he did it. And of course, this is going to sound funny to say, but as much as it's really difficult to understand the direct correlation between the price of a barrel of oil and the price of unleaded gasoline, same can be said for the price paid at the wharf for whatever species versus what it gets sold for on the market, which will change. And I always go back to the one example that I encountered personally, and this is a number of years ago, in Florida, went into the grocery store and just so happened to see salt cod from this province on display in that grocery store. And it was $18.99 a pound. What did the boys get at the wharf that year for that grade A cod? Something like 62 cents. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you even mentioned the Mother's Day part of this, which is, it'll circle me back to what I said, that basic economics does not apply. So what happens then is you got to look deeper. I'll tell you what applies. Cartel-style market supply. And that's exactly what anybody would say if that's not correct. Well, here, Mother's Day is the day of the year that the most lobster gets consumed worldwide, but in particular in North America.
Yeah, which is
so
strange.
That means,
anyway.
Yeah, so that means you're going to haul the most of that product out of the market. So at that point in time, supply is less. I'm sure demand doesn't change much in the restaurants and parts of the world. But after you haul out a bunch of the supply, the price drops. That absolutely goes against the laws of economics, and it comes down to market control, because basically that should not happen. If you look at I've done some research on the price of lobster being served at restaurants in the U.S. in June of 24. Lobster for what they call a lobster lovers duo at Red Lobster was $55.19. In September of 23, it was $53.59. So it's gone up marginally, like $1 or so for that entire meal. The price of lobster drops as high as probably $6-7 a pound from opening. And most people don't even know what the price of lobster is going to be on opening day. So rather than following market trends or current market pricing, such as what you'd see at the Fulton Fish Market, which is on the eastern seaboard, just a truck ride away, when that product leaves the wharf, be it lobster, crab, whatever we're fishing, there's some huge money gets made off this product. But it isn't being made by Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. The people in the plants aren't making the money. The guy at the wharf that owns the enterprise is not making the money. Yes, they're making a living. A lot of people say, well, look at that poor fisherman with his new pickup truck and whatever. Well, I'm going to tell you something. He worked damn hard, or she worked damn hard to get that pickup, risking their lives every day that they left the wharf. And if anybody thinks that it's glamorous type of work, it's not. It's downright hard. It's very risky. You don't know the day you leave the wharf if you're going to make it home to your family in the evenings. They deserve to be compensated properly for this product that people want. This is not a product being pushed on anybody. This is a product that's drawn into markets. And we should realize that our ability to enhance what we make off this product, what every enterprise, what every boat owner takes home, should be way more than they're taking home now. And I'm sure that there are people from the ASP and others that are saying, what's this guy getting on with? Well, what I'm getting on with is trying to bring back a bit of balance and a bit of fairness to this industry. And the only way that you can do it is to have a strong, cohesive union that needs basically transparency and honesty with its members, and that's exactly what I intend to deliver.
I appreciate the time, Dave. Good luck out there.
Thank you very much, Patty.
You're welcome. Take care.
And all lobster harvesters, crab harvesters across the island. On Monday, we'll be doing, I guess it's kind of a debate on Here and Now. I'm not trying to advertise another network on you here, Patty.
But want to get the info. That's fine.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. I'm traveling in on Sunday. Love to have a chance to meet with lots of the fishermen that I know down in and around the Avalon, and if they want a chance to sit down and kick the tires, well I shouldn't say that because they'll end up kicking me. But if they want to discuss anything or put anything forward that they would like to see, then I'm your voice. Appreciate the time, Dave. Thanks, Pat. You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
And St. John's, biggest bay in Newfoundland. I mean, there's more seafood offloaded in the St. John's Harbour than anywhere else in the province, which is fascinating stuff. And the history of lobster is also kind of cool. So, back when my father was a fisherman, and that's a long time ago now, lobster was the poor man's food. You know, that was, a lot of the fishermen would, unfortunately, if they weren't making a lot of money, would eat lobster. And now it's absolutely turned the exact opposite way. It's so-called a luxury item. It's a rich person's food. I know lots of fellas, dad's vintage, that would never eat another bite of lobster in their life because that's what they had to survive on sometimes when they were going at it and couldn't even afford, for instance, some of the other products notably caught. Anyway, that's interesting stuff. Let's take a break. When we come back, Rita, you're next to talk about the proposed school for Kenmount Terrace. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Rita. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
Good.
Just calling in, to talk about the delays with the announced Kenmount Terrace Community School and the issues that the other schools are having to deal with as a result of overcrowding and reconfiguration and the delay with the construction of the new school for the area.
In some part of me is not too surprised with the delay, given the fact that when the new school was announced, we had no idea what grades, we had no idea for how many students, or what sort of what the composition would look like. So the delay kind of is part and parcel with all the confusion from the announcement.
Yes, and we still know no additional information from the day that announcement was made. I mean, there have been talks, which are probably just, rumors at this point in time, that it would be a K-8 school. It would be a replacement for both Larkall Academy and Learysbrook Junior High and some of the students who currently attend St. Andrews. That would be changed from the current grades to a K-3. So there's been, a lot of discussion amongst the community and stuff, but we have absolutely zero confirmation on any of the plans, and I don't think there are any plans.
Well, if they are, they're holding them pretty close to the chest.
Yes, Yes, that's correct. And actually, we did hear from MHA Sarah Studley not just earlier in this week, and she talked about that. Yes, there are no issues with the land. The school is going ahead. We'll be breaking ground in April, and it's an 800 student capacity school, which is currently significantly less than the populations at just Larkhall and Learysbrook, let alone, if you're taking in any students from St. Andrews, or accounting for the growth in Kenmount Terrace, or the fact that a lot of students currently attend Elizabeth Park Elementary because of the French immersion offered there. So if there's French immersion as promised at the new school, then you'd likely have a significant number of those students going to school in this area as well. So, that's a little bit concerning. Whether or not that information is correct or not, I'm not sure. But if it is, it's concerning in itself.
Right. Well, if there are students going for French immersion at St. Andrews that live in Kenmount Terrace, then absolutely you'd have to incorporate that factor into how you build this school and the number of students that you think you're going to be able to accommodate. Because I don't think the other schools are closing. Well, I haven't heard that they're proposing to close, whether it be Larkhall or Learysbrook Junior High or otherwise. Have you?
That is what was indicated. But again, as far as we know, there are no concrete plans. So I think everything is up in the air at this stage. So they may or may not. And, once they get into the planning stages, I guess that can be decided. But as far as we know, nothing has happened since the announcement in September.
We'll chase it. And of course, inside the portfolio of education, there are so many concerns. Infrastructure is one thing, but even inside the delivery of curriculum and the downward trends for scores and the violence in schools, my goodness, that file is much more complex than I ever imagined it would be.
Yeah, it's very concerning, and the concerns are certainly growing. One of our biggest concerns at the moment is the overcrowding within, I'll call the PWC school system, so Larkhall, Academy, Learysbrook, St. Andrews, and PWC itself. So twice in the last, I think it's been 7 years, that school system has been reconfigured to try to accommodate the growing number of students that are enrolled within this catchment area. And right now, Learysbrook Junior High is in September 2024, will have an all-time high enrollment starting out at the school year. And the school is not designed to be able to handle the number of students that are going to be attending. And it is also not designed to be an elementary school, and over 50% of the population will be elementary-aged kids, grades 5 and 6. And one of the biggest concerns there is absolutely no outdoor play area for that school.
Right. I've seen those stories before. They're out there playing in the parking lot. That's right.
They are. Some of the kids, and you can drive by any day at lunchtime, they will be out in the parking lot tossing around a basketball. There's no basketball nets, but they'll just be out throwing around a ball or kicking around a soccer ball. And anybody who's familiar with the area, that is a busy street between those two schools. There is absolutely no traffic calming. When you turn onto O'Leary Avenue, when you're coming from the direction of the mall, there is one sign that indicates you've entered a school zone. And because it is so close to the intersection, you can't really see it if you're turning right or left onto the street. The view is almost blocked. So you're in between the two schools before you even realize that you're in a school zone. There's no speed bumps. There's no speed signs to indicate that you're going over the designated 30 kilometers for a speed zone. So it's really dangerous if kids are having to cross that street regularly throughout the day to try to avail of some of the outdoor play space that Larkhall Academy has.
There's another factor here that needs to be considered too. When there's going to be a new high school built in Paradise, which is now a new commitment, all the confusion about Portugal Cove St. Philip's versus Paradise, families that have children that might go to PWC are wondering what's going to become of their student enrollment, because there's people being bused from that community apparently that are also attending PWC, which I was surprised that they're going that far afield, but I think that's got to be understood too.
Yes, absolutely. Now, what we've been told is that when the high school in Portugal Cove St. Philip's goes up, that some of those students who attend PWC will then attend that school in Portugal Cove St. Philip's. And that school was announced only about 8 weeks prior to the announcement of the Kenmount Terrace School. And it is so much further ahead in the planning stages. I think they've gone out for requests for proposals already. It's not comparable from the 8-week delay in the announcement of the schools, the planning progress that has been made on the two schools.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure what the update is for Pilley's Island or Cartwright either. So, it's one thing to set aside $41 million in the budget, but the details are where people need to be able to understand exactly what the plan is and the time frames associated with. Because they're talking about opening up the school in Kenmount Terrace in 2026, right?
2026 was what the announcement had said. So, we're 2 years away and planning hasn't started. It would be fantastic if we could meet that date is 2026. It just doesn't seem to be a realistic target at this phase unless there have been things happening behind the scenes that have not been shared with the community. But I suspect that's unlikely. And, we're wanting to know details on the planning, but we also need help with addressing the issues that the students are going to be facing until that school opens. We can't just keep overcrowding the classrooms and switching up school configurations. It's not working. And the teachers in the school system are so absolutely fabulous. The kids are privileged to have such great teachers within that school system, but they're really limited on the resources that they're able to work with at the moment.
Yeah, 2026 sounds awful ambitious unless there's a significant amount of site preparation done this year for construction season next year, because this is construction season. We're in June. And without any details I don't even know if there's been a site selected, to be honest.
There's a sign
that's
posted. Yeah.
Okay, there's a sign.
Now,
that's good.
The sign is on a pile of rocks, down at the bottom of Lady Smith in Kenmount Terrace. But the first thing you notice when you look at that is, the power grid that's going right across that piece of land. So, all of that has to be addressed before you can even think about breaking ground.
100%. Rita, I'm glad you made time for the show this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Take care.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. There you go. That's a good one. Let's take a break for the news. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line 3. Mike, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. Good morning. It's nice to see that rain has finally stopped.
Yes, sir. Welcome sight.
Yes. Paddy, now it might be just a rumour, but apparently there's been a breakout of amnesia. That disease causes memory loss. And apparently it happened at the NL Energy meetings. And apparently the Premier got it first, and then Andrew Parsons got it, and he passed it on to Newfoundland Light and Power.
It's not contagious, but what's the point you're making, Mike?
Well, apparently Newfoundland has billions and billions of dollars, and what happened from the memory loss, I think they forgot about the $17 billion that were in the hole already. This province is in the hole. And the ongoing cost of Muskrat Falls. And I don't know where the money's coming from. I don't know if someone can enlighten me. And we got billions of dollars for diesel generation. And then we're another turbine going in. Where's the money coming from, Paddy?
Well, fair question, because, it's going to be pay the piper here at some point, because when Hydro is going to have to divert, Newfoundland Labrador Hydro is going to have to divert some of their revenue stream into rate mitigation to the tune of $730 million a year, $2 billion over 6 years, then what? Yeah. Because they're also, and this announcement's not new, we're talking about $527 million for an 8th generating unit, Bay to Spare, and refurbish Holyrood, and this 150 megawatt combined cycle turbine, so I'm not exactly sure how to answer the question, but the provision of power is exactly what they're in the business of. So if we need the power, we've got to do something, right?
Yeah, I kind of look at it, Paddy, as an admittance of failure of Muskrat Falls and what they consider the dependability of the link. Is admittance of failure is what it is. Like, why did we spend $13.5 billion down there. Why? You know, I thought it was for to put power for this island. That was my understanding.
Well, all the way through, there was going to be provision of power to Nova Scotia via the Maritime Link. That was part of the initial proposal period. We are obliged to provide somewhere in the neighbourhood of 23% of the 824 megawatts at Muskrat Falls to Nova Scotia. Currently about 400 megawatts is flowing per day, so that's being provided. Apparently we're living up to our contractual obligations with Amera, or Nova Scotia Power.
Yeah, but isn't government, though, Paddy, jumping in with this like 2 feet in the pool, like without any forethought or anything else? Because, you know, all I can see so far, and I'm just adding it all up, is that World Energy was promised $138 million. Seamus O'Regan said basically the other projects are going to be getting the same handout, so that's up over $500 million. And now we got a couple of billion there that go in diesel generations and stuff. Thus far, what's that? That's $2 billion, or there's $2.5 billion.
But just let me stop you there, Mike. The government's jumping in with both feet into what?
Into these wind energy projects. You know, we're spending. We haven't made $1 yet, and there's no guarantee. They're struggling to get these hydrogen contracts. I think the one in Argentina secured something for 5 years or something like that. I'm not sure what it is, and World Energy is struggling to get it. And here we are, we're bulling ahead and making plans on billions and billions of dollars, which we don't have. I don't know if they talk about a balanced budget. We're spending money. Like, what about the $17 billion? It's like, it is amnesia. Like, it keeps forgetting.
But what's the $17 billion?
That's what Newfoundland owes now.
Oh, you're talking about the province's net debt. Okay.
Exactly, sir. Exactly. You know, and this is this the increase as the cost of living goes up here. Everything, the fees, the permits, everything goes up, and you know, people cannot carry anymore. Even like Power's talking about another increase, and this $1 billion that they're talking about spending, that's going back to the ratepayers. Like, you're going to end up with light bills $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month. I don't know what government is thinking, you know. But there's only so much the working man can carry. I do know that, because I know there's a lot of people struggling.
Yeah, obviously there's people struggling here in the provinces. I don't think anyone can deny that's the facts. And the issue regarding hydrogen...
The purpose of government is to ease that pain, not to add to it. And I don't see any decisions being made that in the near future that is going to ease that pain at all. Only just like we got a premier there flying around the world like a rock star with he keeps increasing these travel allowance and stuff. It's a runaway train. This Liberal government is a runaway train. We've seen it in the federal government up there with Justin Trudeau, and it's here in the province, and it's alive and well. It's crazy. And there don't seem to be no rules to the game. There's no rules to the game. And listen, if I got $100,000 to travel, I'll make it $200,000. I'll make it $400,000. I'll make it $500,000. This is all taxpayers' money, you know. And they're flicking it around like I don't know, like drunken sailors. It's crazy. I find it crazy anyway. But I pity the young people that are coming after us, because they're the ones who are going to carry the blunt of it, you know. And I don't know what can be done with it. The PCs are not doing nothing about it. They're not even saying nothing about it.
Well, I haven't heard any opposition to these wind, hydrogen, ammonia plays from the Progressive Conservatives, to be honest. So I don't know if anyone's got any different plans for commercial expansion, industrial expansion, provision of power, those types of things. I haven't heard anyone bring forward anything that's different than what we're currently discussing.
Well, if these projects want to come here, Paddy, this is just me, you know, common sense. These projects want to come here, and there's an added cost for the supply power when the wind don't blow. Because that's what it is. And this is what the struggle is for NL Hydro and Newfoundland Light Power. If they want to come here and they need extra power,
they're going to buy it.
But they pay for it. Let them pay for it.
That's the plan.
Roll up your cords and go home.
But that is the plan.
No, this is going back to the ratepayers.
No. If World Energy GH2 needs additional power, they're going to buy it from Hydro.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the infrastructure And NL Hydro, Newfoundland Light and Power, the couple of $1 billion there that we got to put in diesel generations and the turbine and stuff, that's at our cost.
Yeah, but infrastructure for, whether it be transmission or otherwise, for any of these wind proponents, they have to pay for it.
So they're going to pay. They're going to pay to put the turbine in Bay Spear.
No. They're going to pay for any additional transmission infrastructure. I mean, that's what's been on the table from the get-go.
Yeah. Well, the rumor has it says I don't really trust that unless it's in writing.
Well, there's nothing in writing yet because there's no contract, but that's the commitment that the province has made. And you're right. I think he mentioned the $128 million. That's a loan. That's a line of credit that the federal government has brought forward. But to say there's no public monies in these projects is also laughable. It's nonsense because there's going to be massive federal government subsidies for construction costs. So somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe up to 40%. The province in their hydrogen roadmap talk about up to 20% in tax subsidies. So whenever anyone tells you there's no public money in this, it's simply not true.
And another thing too, Paddy, is that like NL Hydro should be there must be some means when they've done the engineering and the design to get that link stable, so we can depend on it. Like, was that not in the plan in the beginning, or is it screwed up that bad that it can never be dependable?
Well,
because we're spending a lot of money when we already got, but we haven't got Muskrat Falls even close to being paid off.
No, but apparently the link has been working as of late. So the 700 megawatt tests have happened. Jennifer Williams was on this program. We asked her all these specific questions. So apparently the Labrador Island link is working to the tune of 97% reliability. The big concern for reliability, once the software issue is settled once and for all, is the towers along the Long Range Mountains. That's where the reliability problem is going to rear its ugly head.
Yeah. So at some point, then they might decommission that, and when it becomes unstable, it's crazy.
I appreciate the call, Mike. Thanks for the time.
All right, son.
Take good care. All right, bye-bye. Very quickly, before we get to the break, I've been asked to provide this shout-out to the ICU nurses at the Health Sciences Centre, and one in particular, Mel Grandy. We appreciate what you're doing over there, Mel. Thanks for tuning into the program, and keep up the great work. Let's take a break. When we come back, Barry Pye's in the queue to talk about the home care negotiations. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Barry, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty.
Good morning.
How's it going, bye?
Doing okay this morning, thanks.
Yeah, I was glad to hear someone else phone in about the home support fiasco this morning. I think she was the first caller there. And she was going on. I mean, she was picking up for workers, and because she knows firsthand of how it works and who suffers and that kind of stuff. But when it comes to with negotiating the contract and through government and all that, I mean, government got no extra money to put into home care, so who's paying? The people that pay are the clients. The clients that are getting 6 and 8 hours a day are going to be cut back to 4 and 5 hours a day. And so the worker is going to be making a little bit more per hour, but the hours are going to be cut. And I mean, that's a year down the road as far as any benefits. So
why are you saying that the hours are going to be cut? Is that actually part of what people are being told?
No, because that's what happens, Patty. I had a union with my company for about 10 or 12 years. And Eastern Health or the government never put any extra money into it. The money had to come within the budget that we were operating at. So you can't get blood from a turnip, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no extra money going into home care. They're trying to cut back as it is. And you know the problem we're having there? I'm after emailing you a few times now and trying to keep you updated.
I read them.
Yeah? Hello?
I said, yes, I get the emails and I read them.
Yeah. I know that. And as far as so I won't get in too much about that anyway, but then you mentioned the social workers in the system regarding child protection and that. The social workers in the home support system are burnt as well. We're after going through about at least 8 social workers in the last 2 years. We get a report with a social worker, and she tries to work on your behalf and advocating that. The social worker don't even have the authority for that now. They can't advocate on a client's behalf in trying to get more home support hours or whatever it is that they want. Once they said they got to follow a direct line, as in here's your directive and here's the script that you follow, and if you stray from it, you're pulled out of it. That's what's happening here. And as far as Newfoundland Labrador Health Services cutting off our funding, a company that operated for 33 years and was in good standing and compliant with everything. I mean, we're at Rotary Manor, and that's a part of Northwest Rotary. Northwest Rotary wouldn't have a delinquent company working in their building to have anything happen to the clients or get a bad name or stuff like that. There was never a complaint with our company. We never had an injury, incident, or an accident in over 18 years. And I can't even find out from anybody in the health services of why they cut off our funding. And nobody wants to step forward and say the reason. Somebody got to step forward and provide answers.
Yeah, even if there's decisions taken that people don't like, and there's, you ask a question as to why or understand the rationale, it'd be helpful if you could get answers, because the silence is deafening. It really is on a lot of these issues.
Patty, I've been 3 years with emails after emails after emails, and the worst answer you can get is no response. No response.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
That's the way it goes. And then that only makes people more frustrated. So, I mean, after a couple of years, Dan, of trying to get extra funding to enhance our program, to get a 30-day notice and hand it over to an agency. Well, right off the top, an agency wants their profit. They're not operating at a loss.
Oh, they're not in it for the goodness of their heart. They're in it as a business to make money.
You got that right. The agency is, but the home support workers that I have, and I have a lot of Nigerians, and as well as 2 homemakers that I've had, one for 30 years and one for 27 years. If the place wasn't worth working at, they wouldn't be here. They can get other jobs for more money and less work out in the community rather than work for $16 or $17 an hour. Geez, you can go to McDonald's or Tim Hortons anywhere and get that benefits and everything. So I don't know where it's all going to come to or what it's going to end up as, but it's not looking good for people dependent on home support services, and with no new people coming in to do home support and that.
And all the while, conversations happening right across the country and here in this province about the ability for more and more seniors to age in place, to remain in their home. You can't have one without the other. You can't have, aging in place without the required supports in the home. So
that's right. And half the people, I'd say half the people here at Rotary Manor are getting about 3 hours a day from different agencies and that rate. But their worker comes in and does a half-hour work and sits down on their phone for 2 hours. The next thing you know, they're gone. So the senior don't get up around, and then they're at risk of falling, or they can't do anything for themselves. And so 3 hours a day for a senior between 75 and 85 that got either kind of disability, mobility issues, or lasts for the other 21 hours.
I hear you, Barry. I appreciate the time. Would you like to say anything else this morning?
No, that's it for now, Patty. I could go on and on about this topic, and I appreciate the time that you give me.
Anytime. Stay in touch.
All right, for sure. Thanks, Patty.
You're welcome, Barry. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's keep rolling to line number 1. Baxter, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Grand. How about you?
I just want to put something out there. I ordered some parts for my vehicle from the States. It was in March, and it was supposed to be delivered to Deer Lake. I went through everything. They didn't show up, and the company that delivered them went to another company to Corner Brook. I put in a claim. It didn't show up, my parcel. I put in a claim to the one transportation company, and they told me to put a claim into this other one. So I put a claim into the other one. This was about a week or so after it was missing. And when they finally got back to me, they says, okay, a claim's been put in. Contact your sender to get more information. So I contacted my sender, and my sender sent me back email saying, well, it's been 2 months since we sent this product, so time has run out and we cannot replace your product or reimburse you. But, I mean, at all the same time, this package has been tracked right to where it's supposed to go in Deer Lake. And the driver of this company keeps saying that he did drop it off there. I was at the place where it's supposed to be delivered, where my vehicle was supposed to be fixed. And I seen their video for the day and the night that it was supposed to be delivered. And it says, received by worker. But what I can't understand is where do I go now? Like, no, do I go back to those guys? Do I push them to? Do I say, well, I'll take you to court or what? Somebody's got to be responsible. The parts are worth $2,100, and I mean I can't really afford it. So what do you think I should do? You got any opinion on it?
Well, I was just trying to follow along with the story. So was there no tracking number associated with this delivery?
Yes, the tracking number took it right from where it left in the States right to Corner Brook, Newfoundland.
And we know the company that had the parts delivered to it?
Yes.
And they simply say they don't have it?
They said, they told me that the driver dropped it off in Deer Lake at 7:12 p.m. on March the 15th. So I went to the place where they're supposed to fix my car. That's what I had to ship to. I'm the third party, right?
Yeah.
And they said no, it didn't show up. And like I went to them, I was a little bit upset, but I mean I didn't say anything. And so when I left, she said, well, come back and we'll show you the video of, like they have the video camera in the store. And from the time that they said they delivered it, I watched 3 hours of film, and there was nothing delivered to the store that night. But it shows on the tracking that he dropped it off. So it was responsible for this.
Well, I would imagine the courier, because if there's no evidence of it being dropped off at that particular outfit, then I suppose it's dependent on what the courier has done with the package.
Well, and I've called him several times, and they keep saying, no, he says he dropped it off there. I said, well, I've been there, and I've talked to the people, and I've seen the footage of their videos. So, you know, so what can I do? Can I, call them or talk to a lawyer? But I mean, if you take this to court, it's going to cost me more than what the parts are worth. But I mean, I got no vehicle and I got $2,100 lost.
Yeah, I mean, there's places where people can file complaints. Whether or not anything satisfactory comes from it is another question. But, I mean, when we talk about business complaints in this province, then they can all be filed with the Service NL. That's where the provincial department that takes care of those types of business-related complaints. And you can, do things like Better Business Bureau and things like that. But unless you take any sort of legal action, which you're absolutely right. If you take legal action, it's going to cost more than the parts are worth. But you can file a business complaint with Service NL. At least that's a place to start.
Service Newfoundland?
Yeah, Digital Government, Sarah Studley's department.
And now would I get all of them?
It should be pretty easy. I'll see if I can grab you some pretty quick. Do you use the internet by chance?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, if you just go to your Google bar and put in Government of Newfoundland, Labrador, Service NL, you'll go right to it.
Oh, okay, Service New Government Labrador Service New.
Yeah, it's called Digital Government and Service NL. Let's see if there's an easy contact number that I can provide you here quickly. All right, here you go. Here's the telephone number.
Okay.
It's 709
709
729
729
4834.
4834.
Yeah, you just ask for someone in consumer protection.
I mean, yeah, it's very frustrating when
Absolutely.
It seems like they pass the buck, right?
So do that much and let me know how that works, and I will give it some more thought as to where else you might be able to turn. But it's the courier's responsibility. And, for the most part now, couriers, what they'll do, because there's so many porch pirates out there, is they'll put the package down by your door, which I always find to be a problem anyway, and they'll take a picture of it. So that when there's confusion as to whether or not it was delivered, they'll have a picture of actually having done the delivery to a home. I don't know how that works with the business.
Yeah, because the thing that puzzles me is, and why they can't look into it is, every time I call them, our driver keeps saying he dropped it off to them, or he dropped it off here. I did it for a living for a long time. I mean, I know what I dropped off, and I know if I dropped it off the wrong place, I'd go find it. You right?
Do that much and let me know what happens.
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you very much for talking to me.
My pleasure. Good luck, Baxter.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, some more talk about the proposed school for Kenmount Terrace, and then we're going to speak with a fellow who's recently released from prison, sleeping on the streets, no support. We'll speak with Robbie as well. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 5. Sid, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty, I was just thinking the gentleman there with the package delivery, and he's not getting anywhere. If he paid with credit card, he might be able to make a claim through them.
Possibly, and obviously he must have paid with the credit card for that type of order to be placed. So that's good thought. I actually thought about that while we were speaking, but I don't really know how much satisfaction you're going to have with that particular issue, because this is a kerfuffle as to whether or not something was stolen or lost or delivered to the wrong address. So I think there's a bit of confusing moving parts in there, but you're not wrong to suggest that, Sid, and hopefully Baxter's listening and will take your advice.
All right. Good luck to him.
Yeah, thanks for this, Sid. Appreciate it.
All right. You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, most major credit cards, there are some consumer protections associated with. I don't know if it will include Baxter's predicament, but that's a fair suggestion, and hopefully he heard that and will call his credit card company as well. Let's go to line number 6. Say good morning to the PC member for Topsail Paradise. That's Paul Dinn. Good morning, Paul. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem at all.
I want to call in because I know you had mentioned Kenmount Terrace in your preamble, and I believe you were speaking to one of the parents, Rita.
Yep.
And I just want to add a little bit more information to this, because the parents came in and met with me yesterday, and very frustrated, I guess, and have a lot of concerns. And they're I guess, suspect in terms of whether they'll get a school in a timely fashion. And this goes back to, I guess, April 18th. They received letters from NL Schools that they were considering a reconfiguration of the Prince of Wales school system. And, the letter told them they were considering this, and they wanted to hear from the community what's important to them. And they gave it, I think, I'm going to say a week. They gave them a week to respond, so that's around April 24th. And, of course, lots of responses. Lots of responses came in. I remember the minister speaking to the hundreds of responses they got. But the point being here is that within a couple of days, the decision was made. And, of course, the decision didn't change. So right from that point, parents felt they were being ignored. And, of course, I asked questions in the House Assembly, and I was told I was being disingenuous on it. But when you see the report now, which was released here a couple of weeks ago, the what was brought forward and what was said to me by parents, and is still being said, was substantiated and supported by that report. And that's all about the reconfiguration and what's being done with this school system. And part of that, of course, is Kenmount Terrace. And I met with the parents. We went up to the site. We were up to the site. And, all they're looking for here is some concrete answers. They want to know some details. As you well know, parents and young couples, they plan where they're buying a house based on what amenities are available. And education facilities is top of the list. And this is what they're concerned about. And look, I went through this, and we're still going through it for Paradise. And it's a similar situation for Kenmount Terrace. So we're looking at that. I bet, we went up. They have a sign in the ground. Sign's been up there. And to be honest with you, it'd be interesting to the developer actually called me as well. And I won't get too much detail there because it's up to him to do that. But essentially, that land currently is not owned by government. Never was. And it's sitting up there with a sign on it, nothing done on it, and no information going out to these parents who are very concerned. And then, of course, we talk about the delay in having that happen. It's proposed for 2026. It's probably going to go further than that. And, okay, what happens in the interim? And the overcrowding, what they're doing, shifting around students and that. Big concerns were raised about grade 9s going into PwC. There's big concerns about the increased enrollment or shifting to Leary's Brook. And there's no talk about any temporary or measures to ease that. You think about it in the past with schools that were overcrowded, we added on, or government would add on a couple of portables or echo trailers or something. But right now, parents are frustrated in that they're not hearing anything from government in terms of what the measures are or what they're going to do to help ease the burden on these. These schools are overcrowded, no libraries, no cafeterias, some places not a place to go out and play. It's ridiculous, and I think government needs to step up and at least, and I would hope they do it sooner than later, and provide a good update to parents that give them some sense of confidence that their children's education is being put to the forefront. And it doesn't seem to be happening. And I really, really feel their frustration, and I hope they keep up what they're doing, and I hope government is listening and provides a more concrete update. It's crazy, really.
Well, they're talking about opening September of 2026, and at this pace of play, that looks highly unlikely. And they're just asking basic questions. This is not something that was instigated by the general public. This was something instigated by government. Government announced a school for the area. And when you make an announcement, it can't simply be, inside this budget is $41 million to advance the cause for Pilley's Island, Cartwright, Kenmount Terrace and Portugal Cove St. Philip's. But unless people even know how big the school is going to be, what grades it's going to encompass, then just some very basic things. Because one of the comments you made, I think, is absolutely right. People considering where they might want to live, what neighborhoods they're going to look for homes in. For young families, a lot of those considerations would be, where's the school? It's exactly how we bought the house that we live in currently, is we bought it in a school neighborhood for the obvious reasons.
Correct.
So, yeah, a bit of information. And look, if there's minimal information to share, so be it. That's right. Just answer the question basically. Where are we? Just a very standard question regarding infrastructure. Where are we? What's the progress here on this particular school, Kenmount Terrace? And if the answer is no progress, well, at least we know there's no progress.
Yeah, and the piece about the land and that, I raised it when it was announced, and I asked the question around it, and I said, well, what's the enrollment? What's the composition? What's this? Oh, we're gonna do consultations to find out. Well, this latest example is of consultations. It was ignored. But when you make these announcements, look, I worked in education. The department in there has enrollment numbers. They don't change drastically from year to year. You have some understanding of what's happening or where the numbers are going. That's there. When I asked questions and estimates, everything was deferred to transportation infrastructure. Transportation infrastructure actually have templates and diagrams and stuff for schools. A lot of this is there, and I think parents just want to know, okay, where are we? Where are we with this? Are we still fighting for a piece of land that we don't own? And how long will that take? Or is the land secured and a shovel's going in the ground next week, or we got architects or people hired? That's all they want to know. And yes, there'll be some hurdles that may be unexpected that you hit. That's so be it. I think the public would be understanding there. But when you make an announcement and you build up the hopes of these families and people who want to move into these areas, that it's not right to do that and not have the details. And many people do it, and many people look. When I moved to Paradise 30 years ago or more, one little child, three eventually. We were hoping for high school then. And here we are. So I think people just want a bit of respect. They want to hear from government with some concrete details on where we are. Tell it like it is, really. That's what it comes down to. So I'm hoping government will come forward sooner rather than later with some more concise information and timelines for these parents.
Fair enough. I appreciate the time this morning, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Paddy. Have a great weekend. It looks like we're going to have a bit of sun.
Looking forward to it. Get to mow my lawn. All right.
Gee, don't talk about it.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks,
All
Paul.
the best.
Okay, bye-bye. And, maybe some of this is broken record stuff, but infrastructure is one thing in education, of course, critically important. But it's still remarkable to me, with all the other issues that have been brought forward inside the K-12 system, that we're not talking about them more. Because, again, all the concerns that people will voice about the economy and jobs and taxes and immigration and or the healthcare system, and education is always way down the list, when in fact if it was number one on the list, maybe some of those other concerns would be lessened. Let's take a break. When we come back, plenty of time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 3. Robbie, you're on the air.
Oh, my Paddy. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Robbie. How about you?
Good. I'm just trying to calm down here now. So, you and I have, been chatted privately a couple of times when things have happened, and it's to the point now where the file's closed, right? With regards to everything, right?
Okay. Do you want to share exactly what we're talking about so folks are in the loop?
Okay, so we'll go back to September 11th, 2021.
Okay.
On September 11th, 2021, I was the owner of a dog grooming business on the corner of Campbell and Cashin Avenue. I was jumped from behind while I was making on my way down to the bank for a cash deposit. The guy got the better of me, and it was my belief that it was at that time I was in fear for my life and in fear for my safety. So I went in and I grabbed a large firearm, and I stood on my front step, and I pointed the firearm at this gentleman who was attacking me. I had broken hands, head trauma. I have metal plates and everything in my hands. And keep in mind, this person came to me and he attacked me. It's all on video. Then I go inside, right? And I just try and cool down. I end up passing out because of the trauma to my head. And I wake up and my house is surrounded with SWAT teams. You know what I mean? They're coming through the speakers. They got assault rifles pointed at my house because someone robbed me and I defended my house. So the story is the police took the statements from the complainant because I pointed the gun at him because I thought I was going to die if I didn't. And you're supposed to. Sorry, I got the dog here. He don't like it when I'm trying. I gotta get this up. Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna get things going, and I'm gonna just go. So, I got arrested, charged with a number of firearms offenses. Right. So at that time, I was released from custody immediately, but of course placed on a fair number of strict orders that I had to comply with for maybe 2.5, 3 years, waiting for a trial date. Right. You've probably heard this before, right?
I have.
Oh, yeah, you get arrested, and they take the statement, and they're like, oh, yeah, this might have happened. Let's let the courts figure it out in 3 years.
Okay, so where are we now?
Right now, I ended up back inside the penitentiary for breaching release orders, and denied bail because they don't like to let you out again when you breach release orders. So then when I did get out, unexpectedly, I was under a release order not to go to the street that I was living in previously. And now check this out. The order was you must have a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. You must report to the RNC. You must provide a valid address within 24 hours of being released. But you can't go to where you already have a home. So guess what I did? I went to the only place I had lived in November. 2 days later, I was arrested from there and brought back for another 8 or 6 months.
Arrested for what?
Breaching court orders for being in my own house that I lived in. They expected me to leave court at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I signed a court order that required me to provide them with with my address and so I got released from court at 2 p.m. The order I signed required me to give the RNC my new address within 24 hours, but I had to be in my house at 9 p.m., but I didn't have a house to be in at 9 p.m., right? So there was no way that could work. So they grabbed me, and then they wouldn't release me again because I breached court orders. So then I spent another 8 months in jail. Then, I was looking at possibly 35 years with firearms charges. And guess what they did the day before court?
What?
Maybe we can just not go ahead with this trial, and we'll let you go today. And I mean, that sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Yes.
I mean, you're waiting. You're expecting to go through a 2-week trial, and I mean, they're saying you can go right now, no trial.
Okay.
It sounds good. It sounds good when they tell it to you that way. It sounds good, right? But they don't tell you that you're going to be under more orders when you get out. Right?
I guess that's the case of being released from prison for just about everybody. So, have you been convicted of anything, or just all these incarcerations as a result of breaching orders?
The only thing I was convicted of was breaching orders, because in order for them to release me today, well, I had to be put on an order to come back for next time. So I could sit there and wait, but I mean, after they got you in there for 8 months, I mean, you'll say anything to get out. And then the cops see you and you're back again. So that brings us up to so that was last April, and I was released last April, and I had nowhere to go. And how some people don't have family and they don't have supports and stuff. I've had. Do you still have your father with you, Patty?
No, my father's gone.
Yeah, same here. My father, David Powers, he was on your show a few times. The day I got arrested for that, he passed away an hour later. It took me a week to find out. So
have you been able to connect with people like the John Howard Society or Turnings or some of these organizations working with people like yourself to maybe try to find you some supports, try to find you a place to stay?
They can put me in shelter, right, for a couple of days. But for me, with my mental health issues and so on, it's not good enough. Like, they put you in jail, it's all bad enough, and they get put down into a shelter where you got to sleep with your sneakers on, and you know what I mean. It's not a conducive environment for anything. So yes, I was offered a shelter. My family, I was my family member, right, my uncle, and cops came to his house, and I mean, he had other tenants in the house, right? So I mean, I wasn't allowed to go there, but I call him my son, right? My pride and joy, my big shorebred Rottweiler pit bull mix. He's everything I got. He's the only thing I got. And then that was my stepdad. But let's go back to 1993 when my biological father...
we can't go back to 1993 before we run out of time and get to the news break. So the summary point...
My biological father hung himself when I was 9 years old. So that's another thing that's on my head at the time. So basically, I'm going to speed real up for you. That's the whole mess of things. And okay, so I got out on Tuesday. I was waiting to go to trial for 2 weeks on some charges that had absolutely nothing to do with. I goes into court. They says, "You want to get out today?" I said, "Yeah, I do, but I will refuse to sign any probation order." So everything worked out. So then I got out, and luckily, I had about $1,000 saved up. So my uncle picked me up. My uncle, who is my supposedly my godfather. Last person really I got in my family. I mean, we've worked together. I've done so much for him, and actually, he had a situation probably about 10 years ago where his entire family of 5 and 2 dogs had to go stay with my mother.
Are you able to stay with him?
I can't stay with nobody. I've been completely disowned by everyone. They won't even speak to me to help me. They'll speak to me when it's ready for them, and
Okay, but didn't you just say that your uncle picked you up?
He picked me up. He wouldn't bring me home. He picked me up because he had my cell phone. What I had to do is I had to phone one of his friends and stay there for a half hour so I could sit down with my phone and book an Airbnb on my phone. So I had enough money for 2 days at an Airbnb. And then that was yesterday morning. I had to check out of there. So right now, I'm trying to make contact with my mother. I'm trying to make contact with my uncle. I wrote him 7:30 this morning. I said, I need these documents. He has some government documents, and I need to get everything going sorted. He texts me. He says, I work from 9 to 4, Monday to Friday. Right? He's a retired pensioner. He's not short of money, but he'd sooner go work for his buddy than spend an hour with his family. My mother won't even answer me. I don't know what's going on there. And I was no angel. I did mess up and stuff, but to have the only family I got, and my family is a well-off family. It's not about the money. The money is nothing. I could have something figured out, right? It's a matter of them deliberately and they're making this they're trying to punish me further, making this as difficult as possible. My mother worked with the bank for 40 years, and I mean, she's named.
I'm sorry to hear all this, and getting in the middle of these types of family issues is tricky, to say the very, very least, for someone in my position and or the folks listening to the program this morning. So I don't know where the final point is to be made here, Robbie, but I'm sorry that you're going through these types of struggles, specifically and particularly with your family. The legal woes, I suppose, that's a process that'll have to unfold as due process and take its own course. I appreciate the time. I have to get going, Robbie, but you hang in there.
Wow.
Wow, what?
I'm going to be sleeping out in the streets again for another night till yeah.
Well, hopefully people belong to you can hear where you are and hear what's coming through for you via your voice, and maybe, just maybe, someone can help do something about it and put this.
I asked my uncle. I messaged. I called my uncle, asked him to listen. He said, "I've got a radio." Nobody answers me. Nobody knows me. My family are millionaires. They have all kinds of money. They just are punishing me.
I'm sorry to hear about your family struggles, and I do have to go, but I wish you well. Take good care of yourself. Okay. The problems inside family can be very real. I appreciate the patience of those in the queue. Daryl, we'll get to you next. I know you've been there a long time. You want to talk about the home care issue. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Daryl, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty.
Hi.
Hi. So I guess, don't really know what to say, but I've been in the home care industry. I'm not a home care worker now, but I've been in the home care industry for a long time. I've fulfilled just about every position you can fill within a local union, everything from the president to being a shop steward. I started off basically in a situation where you're working in a home, you think you're alone, there's nobody there to help you. So you have a problem with the employer. The only thing you can do is literally call the NAPE head office. That's how it started for me, where I became active within the union. I started to build our local. A lot of work, a lot of hours, and these are all volunteer hours. You don't get paid for it. It's a volunteer position at a local level. I've been following the social media posts where people are blaming the union. And I get where they're coming from. I totally do. The fact that, you do, as a home care worker, feel alone. It's not like a setting where it's Eastern Health, where you can go into the office or you can go into a hospital and you can nab a shop steward in a hallway and say, hey, listen, what's the deal here? Even asking a question like, what are my union dues being used for? Right? A lot of people think those union dues are lining the pockets of the people in the head office. They're not. The union dues you're paying in, if your local is not active, are literally sitting in a bank account doing nothing. The onus isn't on the people in the office. They're not your union. They're organizing the union. They'll help you do what you need to do. They'll start the meetings for you. But it's a grassroots movement where people need to become active and help themselves. All of the information is there. This whole debacle that happened last night where an information session gets shut down because people are becoming abusive, that's what that information session is for, to get that information out to the people. That's not on the union. Like, blaming, quote-unquote, the union isn't the answer here. People need to become active. They need to participate in their own rights, their own information. They need to have those discussions with people in the office. How do I set it up? How do I organize this? Who is my shop steward? Who is my president? That's how you start. That's where the information comes from. I've sat on 3 rounds of negotiations. To say that, or to blame it on a negotiator, there's so many moving parts that happen behind the scenes, even behind the scenes. When we were negotiating our contract numerous times, Burke London was having conversations with the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office, or not the Prime Minister, sorry, the Premier. They're having those conversations behind closed doors, coming back to us. The financial stuff, a lot of the times with these contract negotiations, sometimes that comes down literally in the last hour before you're about to take a strike vote. The employer, they can't account for that. The people sitting at the negotiating table can't account for that. All of these, there's so many moving parts here where, does it need to be fixed? Yes. Does it need to be looked at by the government, by the union? Absolutely. But it starts with the person in the home who's taking care of somebody, picking up the phone and making that phone call.
Sure. What's the point you're making, Darrell, about the way the meetings have gone?
Well, the point I'm making about the way the meetings have gone, I've been following along on social media, and I've been following along with the news releases. Some people feel like they've been bullied. Completely understandable. There are proper channels to take to address those concerns. If you're feeling bullied in your job by an employer or somebody that you represent, you have a channel. You can go to the supervisor. The people in the NAPE office, they have supervisors. Those EROs, they have supervisors. You call that office, you make that complaint, you'll be heard. They'll follow through with the complaint, just like any other employer. But, to go to a meeting and to be screaming, and before the introductions are even made, I've seen the videos that are posted online. They do offer question and answer periods. They go through those contracts one item at a time. You know what I mean? You get to sit there. You can make your notes. You can ask your questions. Well, why isn't this happening? Well, why isn't that happening? I can't comment on this round of negotiations. I wasn't sat at the table, but there are proper channels for all of these complaints to be followed through with.
Since we've heard, especially with the first call today from Megan, about how the meeting went and the assertion that there was cursing and whatnot, I've got a dozen emails from people saying, I was at the meeting and the gentleman representing the union, I can't remember his name, Dave, someone was unable to get a word in edgewise. And consequently, the meeting was derailed before it got going. That's what I've been told via email. I wasn't in the room, so I can't attest to any of the veracity of any of these claims.
This is exactly the same things I'm hearing. I'm following the post. I wasn't at the meeting. I did have family members at the meeting. My wife was at the meeting last night, and her and a group of her coworkers are sitting there, literally afraid that they're going to get caught in a lynch mob. that's you get. And Dave Healy, I've had my run-ins with Dave Healy, but Dave Healy has been in my corner as well over the years. I've seen this man literally drive from one end of God's green earth on this province to the other and attend all of these meetings to facilitate this. And I understand he's frustrated. The people there are frustrated. I wasn't at the meetings. I can't say what was said between one individual or the other. But to call somebody a bully and then turn around and use, we'll call it inappropriate language, you can't call somebody bully and that be a get out of jail card for you to act inappropriately. If anything, as an individual, you need to rise above that. And if you do feel bullied, you have a legitimate channel to follow. You can call that. The NAPE office number is a public number. You can call that. You can explain the situation, and you can say, "Hey, I need to speak to somebody." There are channels available, right? And my biggest complaint is I see people saying, "What's happening with my dues?" Yeah, there are dues being deducted from your paycheck. Those dues, if you've ever had to file a grievance as an employee, those dues go to setting up the meeting between the employer and the union or the union representative. They go towards potentially arbitration, where a third-party arbitrator comes in. That all has to be paid for. Part of it is paid for by the employer. Part of it is paid for by the union. But that's where your dues are coming from. Those local meetings that you're how many people out there can afford to pay the money to rent out a hall for a night and take that on the chin? That's what those dues are where those dues are coming from. But if you don't have a local that's active, when I first started off and I had my problem with the employer and I had to call the union, I asked, who's my shop steward? Nobody. Who's my president? Nobody. No, it's not active. What's going on with my dues? They're sitting in an account waiting for a treasurer to claim them. So this is what happens. It's the onus needs to fall on when they say grassroots movement, that literally means you, right? As an employee. And the information is there. These people will more than happily go out of their way. They will support you in setting up those meetings. They will provide you with the education, shop steward training, everything that's needed. You'll get to go on a trip somewhere, completely on the union's bill, to get the education, attend seminars, attend classes where you learn how to even approach the employer. You learn how to negotiate with the employer. There are so many resources available that's just not being availed of because people don't ask the question, who's my shop steward? It's really that simple.
If the concern is the lack of understanding or the detail and nobody knows who's actually registered to vote and all the rest of it, and whether you're talking about medical benefits and the year of lead time, unless the meetings can just unfold with all hands actually attending in an effort to get some answers as opposed to engage in a yell fest or whatever's actually going on, I don't know, because once again, I wasn't there. But the meetings will be of no value to anybody if they just get ripped apart before there's any legitimate discourse, questions, or answers.
I completely agree. If you go to any of these meetings or a contract negotiation meeting where there's an information session handled, the people sitting at the table go through every article. They go through every point. They'll explain every point. You can sit there and you get to make your notes. You need to let people get the information out there. But if it's being completely sabotaged, you got people now that are saying, I'm going to vote no because I don't know what I'm voting on. You could have, and the opposite is also true. Well, I'm going to vote yes. It can't be that bad. But you need to know what information you're dealing with. I sat down with my wife last night. Being a negotiator, I've seen these contracts coming out. I'm not going to say that the contract is a great contract by any means. It's not. But it is a good contract. There's new wording involved in the contract. And as much as everybody wants that raise, the wording in the contract for your rights is more important. It's paramount. And I get people are comparing, the wages that PCAs are making with Eastern Health. They're comparing, probably they could be comparing it to what home care workers are making on the mainland, for example, or in Nova Scotia. That happens. Totally get that. But something that people need to keep in mind is Eastern Health have been negotiating their contracts since like the 1960s. Home care has been negotiating their contracts since maybe the early 2000s. I'm not entirely sure of the date, and I'm sure somebody would correct me on this. But when you do a side-by-side comparison, something you also have to keep in mind is you look at like the public employees or Eastern Health, they get a raise that's like 2%, 2%, 2% over 3 years, or maybe it's 3%. I don't know what the exact numbers is. But when you're getting a raise and there's like 95 cents in 1 year, and there's, those numbers aren't bad numbers. They're not great, but you're getting a raise. There is something. You can't, compare to public health, Eastern Health, and a private sector, it's really chalk and cheese. There's two different dynamics going on there.
Of course. Did I just lose you there, Daryl?
No, I'm still here. Can you still hear me?
It just went quiet there for a second. I'll let you wrap up your thoughts here before we get to the break, Daryl. So the summary is?
My summary is that I get that people are frustrated. You have every right to be frustrated, but you need to take that out in a constructive manner that works towards something. The union, the head office, they're not your union. The union is literally ground level. It starts with the individual. Make the phone call to the office. Find out who your shop steward is, who your negotiator is. Ask, how can I help? I understand people are full of, let me say, I'd say it cleanly, pea and vinegar, but you need to direct that in a positive manner where you're helping people. It's like if this participation or this level of passion was happening within the local working towards these contracts, you'd be unstoppable.
Fair enough. Appreciate the time, Daryl. Thanks for the call.
Thank you for taking the call.
My pleasure. Stay in touch.
All right, bye-bye.
There you go, bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, collective bargaining is a tricky piece of business no matter how you slice it, and regardless of what side of the table you're sitting on. Let's take a break. When we come back, one of the three candidates running for the presidency of the FFAW is Dwan Street. She's next. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 7. Say good morning to the staff rep for 3PS at the FFAW. Also, the Secretary of the Lobster Council of Canada. That's Dwan Street. Good morning, Dwan. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy Daly. How are you?
Best kind this morning. Thanks. How about you?
Great. Interesting show this morning.
So far.
Thanks for taking my call. I didn't get to hear the entirety of Mr. Callahan's call this morning, but I did catch the tail end of it and wanted to call in and kind of add my 2 cents on lobster.
Sure.
So what Mr. Callahan is describing in the marketplace right now, we've pretty much hit the perfect storm. We are facing unprecedented catches, and that's not just here in Newfoundland. We do have to look at the wider picture in the Maritimes as well, because a lot of our product does wind up there. And, I mean, at the beginning of this season, lobster catches all around the province were just, it was incredible. Normally that would be very good news, but what we've come to right now, it seems to be a glut in the market. And, we saw this spring crate shortages, harvesters and buyers having to float crates in harbors, and that's, again, not just in our province, just to hold the product because even though there is a demand for the product, we hit a point where our supply was outstripping demand, and that's never a situation you want to get yourself into. In the marketplace, it seems like a lot of buyers are very hesitant right now to make long-term commitments, and there were some issues with quality and mortality rates when a large quantity of lobster started to come in. So we all had to work together to try to figure out how to mitigate that, of course. And coming off a winter fishery in Nova Scotia where catch rates were very, very low, and we were hearing shore prices of upwards of $20, $21, to see where the prices have declined now up to 62.5% drop since the spring fishery started all over the Maritimes and here. I mean, it's devastating. And 33 and 34 in Nova Scotia right now have closed, so they're going to take a bit of product off the market because they are the largest area when it comes to volume. But that devastation in the winter fishery in Nova Scotia has also contributed to what we're seeing right now. A lot of our buyers here in Newfoundland take lobster and they just flip it, which is unfortunate. We could be having opportunities here at processing plants and adding value to the products, employing workers, but for some reason they just continue to flip the product into the Maritimes. And there are 4 to 5 fewer processing plants in the Maritimes this year just because some went bankrupt last year due to a lack of raw material. So we're in a little bit of a catch-22 here, and I think if anybody wants to look at a number of different indices, whether that's the Urner Barry that we tend to rely on here, FOB New England, FOB Mid-Atlantic, look at the fishery and the price in Maine right now, you can see that it's the entire lobster industry. And I'm hoping we are at the bottom of that and that it's going to start to level out soon, if not already having leveled out. But, we've seen the largest decline in live product, and of course that's where our lobsters are going. And it's definitely not the season that we thought we were going to have when we were seeing those record shore prices in the winter.
Is this an unusual season this year? Because it kind of feels to me over the years that it's a very predictable pattern in the lobster market, whether it be the immediate rush on Mother's Day and some of the historic fall-offs and the catch rates. So has anything really changed this year?
It has. You're right that there's typically a trend in pricing, and you're right about the Mother's Day rush, and of course there's always Memorial Day in the States and Father's Day as well. And we do see that drop-off in price start to happen after Mother's Day and into June. But what happened this year, and of course it happens every year, is most of the LFAs, lobster fishing areas in the Maritimes and here, open at the same time. And that means that there's a big dump in product. But for this year, the volumes of product that were coming out of this province, I've heard from harvesters who had to go out and haul half their pots, come in, offload, and then go out and haul the other half. It's never happened before. So, yes, that trend continues, but I think the drop in price is a bit more drastic this year, given the volumes that we're dealing with. And we've had, for the first time, buyers put harvesters on trip limits on lobster, just stop buying altogether and tell them, we don't know if we're going to be able to buy tomorrow. It might be 2 or 3 days, just to try to clean out that gloss. And again, a lot of buyers have been prioritizing movement of that product over value because they just want to keep the product moving so it doesn't build up.
It's interesting that you just said trip limits, because while we were talking about a glut in the market and what have you, I know fish harvesters do not want to be told that trip limits are part of a manageable fishery, but are they?
I know harvesters, and we certainly do not want trip limits in any of our fisheries. We want to see a clean movement of product, consistent movement. The marketplace wants to see that as well. In lobster, I just think that we don't have the capacity right now. It was very, very disheartening to hear that harvesters were unable to sell their product, that they were unable to move it, and that they were put on limits, because lobster has taken over the second most valuable species in this province from northern shrimp. And that's going to continue to grow, and that has a lot to do with environmental conditions as well. So we want to see an industry that is going to move seamlessly. And in order to do that, I think we're going to have to invest more in capacity and capacity in holding. We're going to have to diversify into other products, because in the Maritimes, of course, they're not just reliant on that live product. You've got your meat and tails, you've got your canners, your vacuum packs, and there's a bit of that going on here in the province, but not nearly enough. And we have an opportunity now with the lobster fishery growing to the extent that it is, that we're going to have to make some serious investments. And, the quality in this province is superior. We've heard that. We've always heard that. But in order to make sure we're capturing that value, we're going to have to, again, get some capacity, get some holding facilities, and try to capture the market when it's at its highest, not just trying to dump product right now when the prices have completely bottomed out.
Yeah, because dumping product, a lobster season is not just a snapshot in time. It's the continuity of the reputation, of the caliber and the quality of the product. If that ever gets hampered because we're trying to rush to market just to get rid of it, and price be damned and or quality be damned, we're setting ourselves up for disaster. Did Royal Greenland not build a pretty massive lobster holding tank? Because I know Rick Stanley out in Cox's Cove, he built one so that he has more control of his own product, whether it be with the fluctuation of price and what have you. So have we not seen an expansion in lobster holding?
We have, but that's just one facility. And with the quantity of lobsters, that are being landed right now, we need significant investment. I know that they were also looking at a hangar in Gander where we'll be able to fly that product directly to other markets other than the States. So that's going to be very important. But those holding facilities, when you look at the ones in the Maritimes, they're able to hold that lobster until the market rebounds and then capture a premium price. So not only do we need to revamp how we're flipping lobster here and how we're selling it, but our pricing mechanism is going to have to change as well. Because if I'm selling you a lobster this week and you're holding that lobster until the end of August before you sell it, there's no way for me to recapture that value that you actually get for that product. Now, we've been successful in halibut and having an agreement that is based directly on transparency, actual sales receipts. I think that's where we need to get with lobster, because the current formula is based on the Urner-Barry. Now, the Urner-Barry index looks at FOB Boston, and while a lot of our product does go into Boston and traditionally has, when you look at the top 10 markets for Canadian lobster, you've got China, you've got Spain, you've got the United Kingdom. So we're not capturing that value. And every time a hand touches that product, that's adding value, and we need to try to figure out a way to bring that back into the pockets of harvesters. And I don't think the current formula is doing that.
Hopefully, when we learn these lessons historically, not just with trends over time, but when one season has a particularly unique set of circumstances, that's where adjustments have to be made before we just fall right back into the same predicament next year or the year after. I mean, not everything's predictable. The market is a living, breathing beast, so no one's ever going to get it perfect, but sounds like there's obviously improvements need to happen. Before I have to go to the news, Dwan, would you like to have the final thoughts?
No, I just thank you for the opportunity, and of course, just to remind everybody that, I am running for president of the FFAW. I think there's an opportunity here for a lot of change in how we do things, whether that's how we operate within our own union and how we get the value from our products, price our products, market our products, and just how we do things in general, because personally, I think we have a big opportunity here to elect an executive board who's going to return this union back to its members. And I think that is a key, and what I would say my key platform point is that I want to make sure that this union, it becomes something that members are proud to say that they are part of.
Appreciate your time, Dwan. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Take care.
It's Dwan Street, running for the presidency of the FFAW. Let's take a break for the news. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Just to clear up my own mistake, I think earlier in the show I said Rick Crane, lobster harvester out of Cox's Cove, built his own $500,000 holding tank, and I think last time I might have said Rick Stanley, so my apologies to Rick Crane. That's the proper name. Rick Stanley is another person I happen to know. Sorry about that. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to the NDP member for St. John Centre. He's leader of the party. That's Jim Dinn. Good morning, Jim. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thank you for having me on.
Happy to do it.
I want to go back to a topic, housing, and I know you're mentioning shelter standards at the beginning of your show, and this week it's been an interesting week. We met with the students, the youth parliamentarians, and one of the motions that they passed in their parliament was to declare housing as a basic human right. And I did have the opportunity to meet with them, and I'll tell you one thing. I guess it gives to an older person and a politician some hope that these young people get it and see the connection between a decent place in which to live and overall health and well-being, not only of people but of society. So that was positive. The other thing was the shelter standards, which were supposed to be out this week, and we haven't seen them. And I've been thinking, back in 2019 when I was first elected, and I remember one of the first meetings I attended, like a community meeting, was with Alison Coffin, our leader at the time, and it had regarding the stabbing or the murder of a person outside an emergency shelter on Bond Street, and that was at that time about there's going to be some things done about that, and there's going to be action taken. But we had a group of concerned neighbors who are deeply concerned about the safety of people who are living there. In my own district, I've had people expressing the same concerns. I know prior to my time as an MHA, I was a volunteer at St. Vincent de Paul, and we would deliver food hampers to people in their homes and to people in bedsit. I have to say I was always shocked by the living conditions, and I know that in any time when I had a meeting with the minister of CSSD, where were the standards? How do you inspect these? How do you make sure that they're safe? And yet here we are, Patty, I guess, still waiting for standards that are I would say long overdue to ensure that they're basic. Even when it comes to inspection of these places, how do you ensure the safety of the people who are living there? It needs to be brought in. If young people can see the importance of having a decent place in which to live, I think it's time, it's well past due that we should be addressing this. Otherwise, we're going to have more of the problems that we see. We're looking at a court case, I think, that was on Cookstown Road, again in my district, where that shelter was described as a hellhole. And I have been speaking to the mother of the young woman who was murdered there, and she was deeply upset. I think how is it that government can allow people to live in these conditions when they're unsafe for the people who live there? And that's a question I'll continue to ask, but I think it's if indeed we're supposed to have shelter standards by now, I think government has had plenty of time to get them out there and to at least start rectifying it at that basic level and start dealing with the conditions right now, rectifying and make sure that people have a decent place in which to live.
Yeah, no question. I mean, sometimes when I look at these stories and government information has not been flowing on the timelines described by government itself, sometimes I try to think, well, what's the political calculation here? But on this one, I can't figure it out because, on top of safe, dignified, healthy surroundings for folks who need this type of emergency shelter, the fact of the matter is, and not to be cold or callous, but we're spending millions of dollars a year on them. So just understanding what the standards are, what they were, what they should be, this is a forward step for government. There's a political so-called victory to be had here. But just not releasing the document, I don't even understand what the rationale or the calculation is.
And look, we are spending millions of dollars, I would argue, and I've been in some of them, what I would call substandard living conditions. And there are some landlords who are making an enormous profit out of it, and I can appreciate if indeed the place in which the living was decent, safe, and was actually assisting with their mental health, but it's not, and I just can't. To me, there is an upside to having standards in place, an inspection regime to make sure that the standards are maintained, and that people aren't at the stage where they decide it's better to be in a tent than to be in a shelter. And that was the genesis of, I guess, the people who are living who set up camp across from the Confederation building. And by the way, there are still people who decide, no, we're not staying in shelters in the shelters where they're out in the tents. We just don't see them anymore. But to me, it's a win. I think a win on a number of ways by putting standards out there for the people who stay there. It holds the people who have these shelters accountable, and it's also, I think, safety and well-being is crucial. It would certainly, I think, eliminate a lot of the other problems that we see that come along with homelessness, it would certainly help people's mental health. The other part, that I attended this week, I went up to Homeworks, had an open house on modular homes, and I go back to, if we're looking for a way to get up, build affordable houses quickly for people who maybe, like seniors, maybe on fixed incomes, limited small incomes or moderate incomes, the fact is this offers an opportunity. And if you combine that with, Patty, like landlords land lease communities or land trusts or land banks, and have organizations like the Cooperative Housing Association of Newfoundland and Labrador engage in it. I think I would have fewer calls to my office from seniors who are actually desperately afraid of being evicted because the rents are increasing so much that they don't know where they're going to live. So all those things, those are positive ways, and they're not my ideas. They're ideas that are out there. But we can engage, bring in the standards, look at how we can get housing up quickly and affordably, and there are ways. If we can put, I think there's a 225 bed a unit apartment that's going up for the Canada Summer Games. That's going to be ready by next year, as I understand it. So if that can be done, surely to God we can find ways to get this kind of housing for people who need it, right?
Yeah, and thankfully in the most recent federal budget too, co-op housing was actually able to avail some of that funding, which I don't think has been the case in the past. Jim, I've got to take a break, but I appreciate your time.
Take care. Thank you, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Jim Dinn, NDP member, St. John Centre, leader of the party. Final break of the morning, final break of the week. When we come back, Renee's there to talk about school crowding. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 3. Renee, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to echo some of the points made by previous callers regarding the configuration or reconfiguration of the Prince of Wales school system. There's been a lot of attention, focused on the new build proposed for Kenmount Terrace, and I think we can all agree that's sorely needed. However, I just wanted to focus a little bit on what the reconfiguration plans mean for students within that existing school system. So the reconfiguration, when it was announced by Minister Howell, was to alleviate capacity pressures being experienced in some schools while leveraging space available in others. I understand the need for the reconfiguration. However, those plans do absolutely nothing to alleviate capacity issues currently being faced within the existing infrastructure. Leary's Brook Junior High in particular. So currently they are already in a state of overcrowding, and this proposed reconfiguration actually translates to them moving from a total of 19 homerooms this year to 21 homerooms next year. So this reconfiguration is actually going to compound the existing overcrowding issues within that current building. I think a lot of parents have brought forward some of their big concerns has to do with moving elementary school-aged children into that facility. Leary's Brook was built as a junior high school. It was never meant to be an elementary school or serving elementary-aged children. However, now we have grade 5s and grade 6s, which are elementary-aged children, going to be moving into that facility. Grade 6 currently there. Grade 5 will be new next year. And one of the largest concerns has to do with outdoor play space and safety of the space that's available. If you've ever been in the vicinity of Leary's Brook Junior High, there is no dedicated outdoor space available for students. And given that outdoor play is part of the curriculum requirements for grades 5 and 6 school-aged children, we have a lot of concerns about how students are going to access that play space and how they can do so safely, even if the field on Vinicombe is looked at as their designated area. They're going to be crossing a very busy street multiple times a day just to access what they need to meet their curriculum requirements.
Right. I mean, that's the area that people have told me before that could be a dedicated play space. Correct. Because the current footprint of that school, like I went to watch a volleyball tournament there not so long ago, and to go into the gym around the back, there's literally no space. You're up against the forest.
There's not, and there's no space within the current infrastructure for additional children. My youngest will be going as a result of the reconfiguration in September, and when they toured through the building a few weeks ago, nobody could even tell them where their classroom was going to be. And there are 6 new grade 5 classrooms moving into that current building. So we have a lot of concerns about, the physical environment, capacity issues, access to outdoor space, and overcrowding. Our kids, Lark Hall specifically, they've lost their library, they've lost their cafeteria. would this be acceptable for most parents who are sending their children into this school environment for the foreseeable future? Even if the Kenmount Terrace School begins building in the spring, we're still looking at 3 or 4 years that our children need to succeed within a current infrastructure. And all we keep getting back from NL schools, from the Department of Education is we're having conversations, we're working with, we're making plans to, but there's nothing tangible being shared and no real solutions to the problems that we as parents that we have identified.
No, of course not. I mean, it's one thing to make these infrastructure announcements, but nothing's built quickly. And so consequently, I mean, one of the comments in the news story I read this morning is basically the lady said, I truly believe that they're losing out on their education. It's hard to argue that point.
Yeah, it is. And we as parents, we struggle with knowing this and still having our children attend their neighborhood school because we feel or we fear that they are being disadvantaged in some way as well. So we're very frustrated. The teachers within the school system, they're doing their very best, but they need more. They need more resources. They need more financial resources. I challenge members of NL schools or, members from the Department of Education to walk through these facilities. They're already very old, and now you're trying to move more children in there when there is physically no more room to be accessed, particularly with Leary's Brook because of where it's located. The option of a portable classroom is not even there.
Yeah, and again, some of that really does come down to the geographical footprint of some of these schools.
Correct.
Look, I don't even know where you'd put some of these portables for a bunch of the schools that you just mentioned. I mean, we had portables when I went to Pi Seth, but we had huge amount of space to accommodate the portables.
And we, the consultation process, I'll use that term loosely because it was a very short consultation process. And, were any other schools in the geographical vicinity looked at as having more capacity than the current schools? Was any type of rezoning looked at as opposed to just reconfiguring within the current school system, which we already know is bursting at the seams?
That it is. And again, I'll say this repeatedly on a variety of issues. When government is unwilling to share whatever details they have on hand, then where does the mind go? We all do the same thing. Human nature is worst case scenario.
Exactly. And of course, we fear with the end of the school year coming upon us quickly that this is going to be an out-of-sight, out-of-mind issue until all the kids are back in September and we're faced with this, this mess of overcrowding once again.
That'll be the case. Renee, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, bye-bye. Dave, am I going to try to sneak Brooke on here? Is that a thumbs up? No, we better. So, Brooke, hopefully you have time for us on Monday because we hate to give you short shrift here with an important topic. You want to talk about the lack of mental health supports, which is certainly an ongoing conversation. All right, quick and final check on the Twitter box for the week. We're VOCM Open Line. You know what to do. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Good show throughout the week. And, of course, maybe for your consideration next week as a potential first-time caller, I'd also be curious to hear what people in the province have to say and think about some of those big issues that are unfolding in Ottawa. I mean, because some of those are going to have a direct impact on Canadians from coast to coast to coast in the upcoming election, whenever that's going to be. All right, big thanks to everyone who supports the program, all of the callers, listeners, emailers, and tweeters. You're all right. We will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. We'll talk Monday. Bye-bye.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.